Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm James from OpenZeppelin. If you don't know OpenZeppelin, our mission is to protect the open economy by providing security audits, tools, products, contracts to developers. So for Solidity developers, we already provide three main libraries. We have the main one, we have the upgradable one, and also the community library. So today we have a new one in the family. We have confidential contracts. So today, the agenda of today, we will first skim a little bit on confidential solidity. Then we will dive into the OpenZeppelin Confidential Library. And after that, we will jump to security insights. So what are the differences between solidity and confidential solidity? So first, confidential solidity is still solidity. It's not another language. It's more like tooling on top of solidity. So the first difference is around types. So you know that in solidity, we have different types. We have rule, we have int, we have addresses, and each value is a clear text. In confidential solidity, it's a bit different. We have encrypted value. So it could be EBOL, EUINT, EAddress, and each value is a ciphertext handle. In fact, it is more like an identifier to some encrypted data, which is located off-chain, for example. Another key difference is that in confidential solidity, there is no branching on confidential values. So if you want to branch, you have to use FHE select, for example. In the same way, there is no revert in confidential solidity. So if, for example, let's say you want to build something which transfer some confidential tokens to someone, you would first have to check the encrypted balance. If the balance of the sender is enough, you would return the same requested amount. But if the balance is too low, you would return an encrypted 0, and then you will give everything back to the caller. So the caller would be able to know what had been transferred because there is no revert. So the caller would be able to see, okay, is it the requested amount or is it the encrypted 0? Okay, so these are, in few words, some differences between solidity and confidential solidity. So on top of that, we have built the OpenZeppelin Confidential Library. So what is inside? We have three parts. We have some utilities. For example, if you need to deal with a safe map, you need to handle accesses. For example, there is also something for checkpoints. So it's more like low-level tooling. On top of that, we provide a couple contracts related to confidential tokens. So the standard for confidential token is the ERC7984, and we provide an implementation for that. And in addition to this confidential token implementation, you can find some different extensions, such as the ERC20 wrapper. There is also the observer access, omnibus, RWA, so there is many more. And on top of these confidential tokens, we have even more complex contracts. We have the confidential batcher, and we also have the confidential vesting wallet. So today, I won't be able to dive into everything. We are going to focus on the confidential token contract and also on the ERC20 wrapper. Okay, so about the confidential token, what is the difference between an ERC20 token and a confidential token. In the confidential token, if you query the balance, what is returned by this function isn't a clear text value. Instead, what is returned is an encrypted handle. So this encrypted ciphertext, the handle, is returned to the user. In the same way, if you want to know the confidential total supply of a confidential token, you won't get any clear text value, but instead what you will get is also a handle, which you will have to decrypt off-chain. Also, if you want to transfer some confidential tokens to someone, what you provide isn't a clear text amount, but instead an encrypted amount with proof that you know what is inside this, encrypted amount. And also another difference is, as we already see, this function won't revert if let's say the value, the balance of the setter is too low. So we return the handle of what has been actually transferred. Okay. Also, with this confidential token, you could set an operator which will be able to spend your confidential tokens for a certain amount of time. So yeah, there is more in the confidential token, but like this is in few words what you can find inside. Okay, so now let's have a look to the confidential wrapper. So what is it exactly? This wrapper allows to wrap an ERC20 to a confidential token. So for example, if you are on the left, you have some green ERC20 tokens. You could call the wrapper with the wrap function. And then after that, the wrapper will take ownership of these non-confidential tokens. And in return, it will mint the confidential tokens here in yellow. So here we see that there is two persons. In fact, could be the same person, like you want to wrap for yourself. This is already used in production. For example, we have the example of the confidential USDT with a 32 million value on it. So this is how we could wrap some tokens. Let's see how you could unwrap some token. So going from confidential tokens to non-confidential tokens. So this for this flow, it is a two-step process because at some point you need to decrypt an amount, and you can only decrypt off-chain. This is why it's a two-step process. So first, if you have your yellow confidential tokens, you could call the unwrap function with the encrypted amount you want to unwrap, and also with the proof of that encrypted amount. After that, the wrapper will burn some confidential tokens and will ask to decrypt publicly the encrypted amount. So after that, because this encrypted amount is publicly decryptable, the user can get the clear text and the decryption proof, and then is finally able to call the finalize unwrap function. So when the user calls the finalize unwrap function with the clear text and the decryption proof, if the decryption proof is valid, then the wrapper transfers the non-confidential token to the user in green. Okay. So yeah, we have here are just few examples of what we have in the library, but yeah, feel free to have a look to what we have. So building this library, we learned a couple lessons. So here are few security insights for you. So here, if you look with this contract A, we have a contract which allows to transfer confidential tokens to someone. So for example, line 4, we have the balance of the sender is decreased, and line 8, the balance of the destination is increased. Okay. The main issue here is that if the balance of the sender is too low, it will just silently underflow. So you won't notice. And it will still go to line 8, and it will increase the balance of the true address. So what you should do instead is adding, like you cannot branch, but you can add an FHE select, and here you could check what is the balance compared to what has been requested. So if the balance is high, it's fine. You can return the requested amount. But if the balance is too low, then you can return an encrypted 0. So it's line 13. If you have an encrypted 0 and you increase with an encrypted 0, it's fine. So that was the first example. Let's take another one. So here we also have a contract which allows to transfer confidential tokens to someone, but there is a small difference. It's that on each transfer, there is a fee which is taken, and this fee is computed inside another contract. Okay. So the main issue here is that the contract B is giving a persistent allowance of the amounts to the fee handler, and also in the fee handler there is no check. We will jump right to the solution, so it will be easier to see what happens. So a safer approach. The issue here, and we'll see right after, is that someone, a malicious actor, could decide to copy the handle of the encrypted amount and call the calculate fee function directly, and then this contract would grant some accesses to this malicious attacker. Let's see the solution. So here it is recommended, usually it's recommended, like when you grant permissions of a handle, it's best to use transient allowance. It's cleaner, it's safer. So if it's possible, just do it. And what it's important here is like at line 14, the contract verifies that the sender is allowed to access this handle. So if I am an attacker, if I try to copy the handle and call the calculate fee directly, it will just revert line 14 because I'm not allowed to access the handle. So yeah, that was an example. Let's see a last example. So here we have an auction contract. On this auction contract, you could bid. If you have if you bid, when you bid, there is some confidential tokens which are transferred. If the bid is the highest one, you are registered as the highest bidder. So it makes sense. The issue we have here is, as we already seen, line 5, the contracts transfer tokens from the sender to itself. But the issue is that this contract isn't checking what has been actually transferred. So here, even if the message sender hasn't any tokens, if the requested amount is the highest, then the message sender will be registered as the highest bidder. So to solve this, again, it is super important to read what has been actually transferred. So when you know what has actually been transferred, you could use FHE greater than and select, and you could do a safe path. And then only if the bid is the highest, you could be the highest bidder. Okay, so yeah, just a short checklist. Beware of silent underflows. Okay. Try not using persistent allowances. Use a transient one. And also, there is no revert for encrypted amounts. So yeah, you should always check what is returned by a confidential function. Okay, so we provide an OpenZeppelin wizard, which is a user interface. There is a confidential tab. So if you want to play around and see what features we have, it is already available. It's also interesting it's a good starting point, for example, if you want to build something. And yeah, feel free to use it. Yeah, thank you for your attention. And I'm here if you have any question. Thank you.